So there's this major standoff brewing in California. On one side, you've got federal immigration agents, and on the other, you have state officials. The Department of Homeland Security, or DHS, is accusing the state of putting the public in danger. But California says, nope, we're just protecting our communities. We're going to break down what's really going on in this fight.
And just so you know where we're getting our information, this entire explainer is based on some really deep reporting from Shasta Unfiltered. They've been on the ground tracking this whole thing.
You know, to really get what this conflict looks like in the real world, we've got to start with this incredibly tense situation that went down at a county jail. It pretty much perfectly captures what this whole debate is about.
Okay, so this whole story really zeroes in on one man, Jorge Lopez Santos. On February 2nd, federal ICE agents showed up at the Ventura County Jail. They were there to take him into custody, but what should have been a pretty standard transfer, well, it turned into anything but.
So here's how it all went down. First, California authorities completely ignored a formal request from ICE to hold on to Lopez Santos, so he was just released from local custody. This meant federal agents had no choice but to try and arrest him right there in the public lobby of the jail. That's when protesters surrounded them and things got chaotic. In the middle of it all, an ICE officer was actually assaulted.
And when you look at the timeline, you see there's a whole backstory here. Lopez Santos came into the country legally with a visa, but then he overstayed it. And this incident at the jail, it wasn't the first time an ICE detainer for him was ignored. This pattern of, let's call it non-cooperation, is really at the core of the federal government's entire argument.
So yeah, the case of Lopez Santos is not some random one-off event. It's really a symptom of a much bigger disagreement over policy. And to make its case, the Department of Homeland Security has started releasing some pretty shocking numbers.
Okay, but before we dive into those numbers, let's make sure we're all on the same page. What even is an ICE detainer? Well, it's basically a formal request. It's ICE asking a local jail, hey, can you hold this person for an extra 48 hours after they're supposed to be released? It just gives them a window to come and pick the person up. It is not a warrant, it's a request for cooperation.
So just how big of an issue are we talking about here? According to DHS, right now, there are active detainer requests for more than 33,000 people inside California's prison system alone. That is a huge number of individuals that federal agents are trying to keep tabs on.
But here it is. This is the number that is really at the heart of this whole fight. Since January of last year, California has released over 4,500 of these individuals back into the community, even though they had active ICE detainers. So from the federal point of view, that's thousands of missed chances to enforce immigration law.
And to really hammer home their point, DHS broke down the criminal records of the people who were released. The data they presented shows this group includes people charged with some really serious crimes. We're talking nearly 1,500 drug offenses, hundreds of assaults and weapons charges, 234 sexual crimes, and even 31 homicides.
This all leads to a pretty direct statement from the federal government. The DHS Assistant Secretary, Tricia McLaughlin, put it really bluntly. She called honoring these detainers common sense for public safety. For them, it's that simple.
But as you can probably guess, California officials see this completely differently. This isn't just about numbers for them, it's a deep, fundamental disagreement over what public safety even is and the best way to actually get there.
So let's lay out the two competing arguments. On one hand, DHS says, look, when you ignore our detainers, we have to make arrests out in public, and that's dangerous for everyone, our officers and the community. But California fires back, saying, hold on, we do cooperate and transfer people convicted of serious violent crimes. Their argument is that if they cooperate on every detainer, immigrant communities will lose trust in local police and become too scared to report crimes. They say the DHS claims are misleading and that they're absolutely not giving sanctuary to dangerous criminals.
And DHS doubles down with more data to back up their claims. They're reporting an incredible 1,300% surge in assaults on their officers. And they're also pointing out that 70% of the people they arrest already have a criminal record here in the U.S.
But California has its own key number to push back with. The governor's office points out that since 2019, the state has actually transferred over 12,000 people into ICE custody. So from their perspective, cooperation is happening, just maybe not on the scale or in the way the federal government wants.
So where does all this leave us? Well, it's pretty clear this is way more than just a simple policy squabble. What we're really seeing is a power struggle between the state of California and the federal government over who actually gets to call the shots on immigration enforcement.
And that boils down to one final, really big question that's just hanging over this whole debate. When state and federal laws are in direct conflict like this, Who gets the final say on what public safety really means? Right now, that's the question nobody seems to have an answer to.